What's going on? Welcome back to the channel. So today's video, I'm going to be walking through the cost of my LSA blower swap. I'm going to try to give you guys some tips on where to find the parts, as well as where you can save some money, kind of what's not a necessity if you're trying to do this on a budget. So jumping right into this, this wasn't cheap. Now, I knew it wasn't going to be cheap, but it definitely costs more than I thought it was gonna be. Primarily because a lot of stuff that I kind of planned out, like the heat exchanger and certain things, it kind of changed last minute and I ended up upgrading them, and that's where a lot of the cost went. So all in all, this swap cost me about $8,100. Now I did have a fast 102 on the car with a 102 intake. So once I pulled the intake off, I sold that, the rail, the injectors, my old F-body accessory drive, as well as my old headers. I was able to make back around $1,200. So all in all, this really cost me about $6,900, which isn't too bad considering a Pro Charger kit for like a 5th gen Camaro goes for about $6 grand. So considering I went with like the meth injection, I got the smaller pulley, I upgraded the headers, you know, the headers and the Y pipe, that's all in that cost. I don't think I did too bad. But one thing I want to touch on before I start getting into the prices of everything and what exactly I did. Any of you guys who've been watching this from the beginning know that the very first video, I think it was called like boosting my LS Swap 3rd gen or something. I was initially going to turbo the car, and the whole reason I changed directions on that, I was kind of on the fence either doing this or doing the turbo. But then I kind of set my mind on the turbo. But the reason that fell through was because of mostly, you can see I'm working outside. I don't have a garage. A turbo kit, if you're not buying like a pre-made eBay one, it's a lot of work. You know, there's a lot of modification, a lot of custom piping, stuff like that. And the biggest thing for me was I wanted to keep the air conditioning. This is mostly a street car, so the AC was very important to me. I did not want to get rid of it. And as far as I know, they do not make just an eBay drop-in turbo kit retaining AC. I know CX Racing, I think they're the only ones that have a kit on eBay for a turbo for this car, and that gets rid of the AC. I even called them up directly and they said, yeah, you can't keep it. And the other thing was, the only other option would have been to make like a custom... And the only other option would have been to make like a custom kit. And as I mentioned, that's gonna be a lot of modification. I'm outside, I don't really have the tools to pull something like that off. And it would have just took a lot of time. So this was definitely the easier route to retain the AC. So jumping into the actual cost of everything and finding the parts, first thing, obviously, you're gonna need a blower. Now I got mine off of eBay. At the time when I was first researching this, before I even bought anything, a regular ZL1 LSA blower with no lid, they were going for around $800. Now, most of these blowers on eBay, they're factory like warranty takeoffs. Pretty much there was a problem with the coupler that couples the pulley to the rotors inside the blower. And instead of pulling the snout off and repairing it, GM just swapped the whole blower out. And somehow all those warranty blowers ended up on eBay. And they were going for relatively cheap at first. I mean, $800 for a blower, that's not too bad. But I think what happened was the supply kind of diminished and everybody bought most of them up. Because from the time that I was initially searching and I found the actual bottom half of the blower for $800, just a quick search before I made this video, the same part is going for like $1,800, no lid or anything. I paid $2,500 for mine, and that was with you know, the main blower itself, a brand new lid, brand new fuel rail, all the bolts, gaskets, hardware. So I don't think it did too bad. They're definitely going for at least that, if not more right now. Just do a quick search on eBay, search for LSA blower, ZL1 blower, CTSV blower, anything like that, and they'll pop up. The CTSV ones have a silver lid. The CTSV style is going to give you more clearance, being the front of it isn't as square, so it kind of gives you more hood clearance when you close it. I don't think it's going to fit under a stock 3rd gen hood. Maybe if you do a little like clearancing of kind of notching of the bracing underneath, like I had to do with mine, but I'm not really sure if it's going to fit. I have a 2-inch cowl on my car, and you can see after cutting out like over here, I was able to actually get it to fit just barely, but it did fit under this hood. And for anybody who's curious, this is a Summit Racing Good Mark 2-inch cowl steel hood. And it fits under there quite nicely after cutting that little notch out around there. But as for the blower, you guys are kind of on your own. I'm going to link one of them down in the description, as well as all the other parts I'm going to be talking about. But as far as finding one, I mean, search the forums, search Google, go crazy, try to find the best deal you can, but don't feel bad if you end up paying like $2,500 to $2,800 because that's kind of just what they go for. I mean, you wouldn't really be getting a bad deal at this point. So after I had the blower, the next thing to do was figure out the accessory drive. Now I'm not going to touch on this yet. I'm going to wait for the end of the video to get into detail on that. But I did have to go and swap out the accessory drive, most obviously because you need a spot to put the blower belt. Before I get into that, the other thing I did was the headers. I originally had Speed Engineering 1 3/4 inch headers. I wanted to go to a 1 7/8 just because this is a 5.3 and I was kind of doing anything that I could just to get the most horsepower out of it without going with new heads and cam. Any of you guys who've been watching me for a while, you'll know that I have 799, /243 LS2 heads on it. They're pretty much stock aside from Brian Tooley valve springs. I have hardened comp push rods, and I did the trunnion upgrade for the rockers where I changed the bearings to the comp style. And then from there, I just had the head milled about 30 thousandths just to bring the compression back up. Being it is a 6-liter head and putting them on a 5.3 with the dish pistons was going to drop the compression a bit. That wouldn't have been bad considering going to a boosted application, but these motors already have around, I think, 9.5 to 1 compression, so they're already kind of low as it is. I didn't really see it necessary to drop the compression anymore, especially since I was planning on running the meth, and we do have 93 octane around here. As far as the cam, I left the same cam that I had before in there. It is a TIC Performance Stage 2 turbo cam because, as you know, I was planning on going turbo. Now, I didn't really see this as a big deal. It is it's a relatively aggressive cam. It definitely produces way more power over the stock 5.3 cam. I think TIC rated it at around 70 rear wheel horsepower upgrade over the stock one, so I was in no rush to change it. I do plan on probably going to a blower cam one day, most likely when I swap out the heads. But for now, that cam made good power and I am happy with it, so I'm just gonna run it the way it is. Also, when I put those heads on, I put on LS9 head gaskets as well as ARP head studs. So I pretty much had the thing all ready to go as far as boost went. So when it came to doing the blower, I just kind of swapped that stuff over. You don't have to do that. It's a good idea to do the head studs and the better gaskets. I mean, there's people with, junkyard 5.3s, pull them out, throw a turbo on them, and they don't have a problem. So I don't think it's really a necessity. It's definitely a good idea and cheap insurance if you have the heads off. But if you're not running too much boost and you're really trying to do this on a budget, you could probably get away with not doing it. As far as the bottom end goes, it's completely stock with the exception of a double roller timing chain. I think that's the LS2 style. Please correct me if I'm wrong. When I had the motor out, I just put the beefier timing chain, new oil pump, and that was it. Didn't do rod bolts, nothing like that. And for anybody who just found this channel, look in the description. I'm gonna have a link to my playlist. I have literally every video from when this thing was NA up until where it sits right now. So you'll be able to see when I pinned the crank, when I did the fuel system. Literally this entire build is in a playlist. I think it's like a 20 video playlist. So definitely go check that out if you're just discovering the channel. Also at the end of this video, you're gonna wanna go check out the description because I'm gonna have an entire list of everything I use in my build, with the exception of little like hoses and gaskets and random stuff like that. But as far as the meth, the lid, the fuel rail, accessory drive, all that stuff, it's all gonna be in there. So if you wanna replicate my exact build, definitely check out the description. But at the same time, I'm also gonna have a budget build configuration. So I'm pretty much gonna cut out the stuff that isn't needed. So the 2.4 pulley, the meth injection, the headers, all the stuff that you don't need to get the swap running if you're trying to save as much money as possible. That configuration is going to be in there as well. So definitely go take a look at the description if you're getting ready to order parts for your build. All right, so let's continue talking about the headers. Now I have Speed Engineering 1 7/8 headers on the car. As I mentioned, I had 1 3/4 before. I upgraded them just to get a little more flow out of the little 5.3. So if you already have a set of 1 3/4 on your car, or even shorty headers, not long tubes, you can leave them. It's not a necessity. Sure, you're gonna make a little more power if you upgrade to the bigger header, but that's something you can always do down the line. So between the headers and the Y pipe itself, that's like $600 that you could take off your build cost. Another thing I went extra with was the radiator. Now, for any of you guys who've been watching this from the beginning, you know, before I put the blower on, I was always struggling with overheating issues. It actually turned out to be the fans. I was running cheap eBay fans at one point, and my LS1 fans were just worn out. So whenever the car would come to a stop, the temperature would kind of creep up with the AC on. I swapped over to the bigger Summit radiator. That helped a little bit, but once I got a hot day, I noticed the same thing was happening with the AC on. Once I actually replaced my fans with this eBay shroud and a couple of 12-inch spout fans, that problem went away. You come to a stop, the car just comes all the way down to 180 and the fan shut off without an issue. I would definitely recommend getting a good set of fans. But by all means, you could definitely run the stock 3rd gen radiator, because I was running that before the blower, and I never had a problem. My biggest thing was the fans weren't cooling enough. So by not doing the radiator, that right there is about $300 that you could take off the cost of your build. The other thing I kind of went extra with was the heat exchanger. Now, I was initially going to go with an eBay CX Racing heat exchanger, but being I had the hood latch out of here, I noticed there was a lot of space in this front end. And anybody who knows about these motors knows heat soak is always an issue. Those composite intakes are just always causing heat soak on these motors. So after adding the blower, I definitely wanted to make sure I had enough cooling. So after randomly searching Summit Racing, I came across this Ford Raptor AFCO unit. You can see it has relatively thick core, and the whole thing extends pretty much side to side inside the engine bay. So I figured, why not go for the biggest one I could find? It's certainly not going to hurt anything. But by all means, that's not something you have to do. You could just go with the simple $150 heat exchanger from eBay, but I would definitely recommend just going for the stock ZL1 unit. It's a little bit thin, but it has a lot of surface area over a lot of the CX Racing eBay ones. And the difference in price compared to this one is going to be about $490 for the AFCO Raptor one, and about $200 for the stock ZL1 heat exchanger. So once again, there's some place that you could save some money. The other thing I did was the meth injection. Same thing, I was kind of trying to keep away heat soak and squeeze every last horse out of this thing as possible. I'm just running Snow Performance Boost Juice in there. That cost me around $460, something you don't have to do. Coming over to the accessory drive and the blower snout, I upgraded to a ZZP 2.4 pulley. That's about $160 for that pulley right there, with the quick change coupler. But as you guys know, you could just run the stock ZL1 blower pulley. You don't have to swap that out, so you can save yourself another $160 right there. And then for the accessory drive, I'm running an LSX Concepts LSA blower high mount accessory drive. Now, I went with this accessory drive for a couple of reasons. First being, it retained AC. Other thing being, if I was going to run a stock LSA accessory drive, the crossmember was going to have to be notched some more. Now, the difference between a stock F-body accessory drive and an LSA or a Corvette LS3 accessory drive is the Corvette and LSA stuff sits about 3/4 of an inch closer to the block. That means that my compressor that was mounted down below is going to have to come almost an inch closer to the crossmember, as well as the alternator that's set in the same spot on this side, that was going to hit the crossmember. So I would have had to come in here, notch the driver's side for the alternator, as well as made the notch bigger for the passenger side. And with the motor in the car, that is no easy task. I would have had to either pull it or drop the entire crossmember. And having a notch in one side isn't too much of a big of a deal. Pairing that with the notch in the back for the oil pan, I did not want to have to make one on this side for the alternator. Plus, when it comes to that stuff, I'm kind of lazy. If there's a way that I could just bolt something on to get around a problem like that, I definitely am going to go that route. And the funny thing was, I just found this setup by accident, just looking on Google, and my first impression was it might not fit. Primarily for the fact that it's mostly made for like older muscle cars. So like I was thinking like G-body, you know, Monte Carlo SS, stuff like that, with a lot wider of an engine bay. Because I used to have a Monte Carlo SS, and that engine bay is a lot wider than this one. So I was unsure if the compressor was going to clear. They had measurements on their site, so I took the measurements from where the crank was over to the edge of the compressor, and lo and behold, it fit extremely well too. I mean, you can see there's quite a bit of space over here. That's not going to come in contact with flex or anything like that. I did opt for the race drive just because I didn't want to have to run into any belt slip issues. The race drive over the stock LSA spring tensioner, it's pretty much, you could just put a breaker bar on here and tighten that down as much as you need to keep the belt from slipping. So that's definitely a good option to go with. This setup cost me around $1,800. You could save some money by going with the stock LSA accessory drive, but keep this in mind. Now, Jeg sells the stock LSA kit. I believe it's $1,000. None of them that I know of come with the crank pulley, so you're gonna have to get that separate regardless. But if you do want to run AC like me, you're gonna have to buy the LSA kit from Jegs. That's about $1,000. The AC add-on is another, I think it's $350 or $400. So right there, you're at almost $1,400 for the accessory drive. This cost me $1,800, and you're not gonna have to worry about belt slip. You have the adjustable tensioner. You don't have to notch anything. It just kind of drops right in, and you have plenty of clearance underneath. I was actually looking under there because my oil pan is kind of starting to leak. I'm gonna have to change that. And just looking under the car without having the compressor and the alternator there, there's a shitload of space now to just get to all those bolts on the side. Also, if your car is not running AC, they also have a non-AC kit, which pretty much just comes with everything on this side. So you still get the alternator, the power steering pump, You get the race drive. You're gonna have to get your own water pump and crank pulley, as with any accessory drive. But you get all this stuff on the side minus the AC, and that is around $13.50, I believe. So for an extra $350, you'll get the adjustable race drive. You won't have to worry about belt slip, and you don't have to go hack up your cross member. Also, I want to let you guys know that I reached out to Greg from LSX Concepts, and he agreed that it would be a great idea to put out a coupon code for $100 off of any of the complete LSX Concepts LSA blower accessory drives. Now, if you go to the site and use the code LSXMAT, you'll get $100 off of any of these complete drives. So you could get the one that I have, which is the race drive with AC, or you could get the same kit minus the AC, or even go for the high performance Gilmer drive. But regardless, any one of those that you buy, you'll get $100 off your order. So I mean, comparing that to just using the stock LSA accessory drive, a few $100 more, you get the adjustable drive, don't have to worry about belt slip, and you don't have to go hack up your cross member. So for wrapping this video up, the cost of my build versus a more budget-friendly build, you could skip the meth injection. That'll save you about $460. You could go with the stock ZL1 intercooler. That'll save you about $300. If you keep the headers that you're running on your swap right now, you could save $600 right there, assuming you go with the same Y pipe and header I went with. If you end up running the stock ZL1 blower pulley, you could save about $160 there over the ZZP one that I went with. And if you're really on a tight budget and trying to save as much as possible, you can go with the LSA stock accessory drive from Jegs. That's around $960. As I mentioned, be aware you're going to have to notch your cross member on both sides, and you also might run into interference if you're running AC with the compressor hitting the long tube header. That's the problem I ran into, because I initially was getting the LSX Concepts kit minus the AC because I was just gonna run my old F-body compressor and just put a Corvette bracket on it. But once I mocked that up, the hoses on the back of the compressor were actually hitting the header. So even if I notched the cross member more, it still wasn't gonna fit. But I mean, if you're not running AC and you don't mind notching the cross member, you can go with the factory LSA kit. One more thing I want to touch on the injectors. I put Siemens 80-pound Decker injectors. You don't have to go with an injector that big. You can go with a stock ZL1 injector for around $150. I think they're going for on eBay. These cost me around $380. So once again, a couple of $100 you can save right there. But I would definitely recommend looking into one of these kits. I have videos on the installation. Plus, don't forget, if you use the code LSXMAT on their site, you're going to save yourself $100 off of any of these accessory drives. So for wrapping up the total cost of this blower swap, my build cost me $8,100 after I sold my intake, accessory drive, injectors, fuel rail, headers. It cost me around $6,900. If you guys go with all the stuff I mentioned as the budget option, it'll cost you around $5,300 to $5,600 before you sell any parts you have. So if you have like an LS6 intake, injectors, accessory drive, you're gonna have left over when you pull them off, you could just go sell those, and you could probably end up doing it for around $5,000, if not less. If you go check out the description, I'm gonna have the link to the LSX Concepts page with all the accessory drives covered under that $100 discount, as well as the coupon code itself. Plus, I'm gonna have an entire list of all the budget parts that I mentioned. So the stock ZL1 injectors, the stock LSA accessory drive, stock ZL1 heat exchanger, and I'm gonna try to find a blower for sale on eBay. I can't guarantee that link's still gonna work because it is probably gonna be an auction, but you're kind of just on your own when it comes to finding the blower. But as I mentioned, anywhere between $2,500 to like $2,800 is what you can probably expect to pay for a complete one with the fuel rail and lid. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a little insight to what something like this would cost. If you don't follow me on Instagram, link is gonna be in the description along with everything else. Also, as I'm recording this video, my new rear end is on its way, so it should be here within a week. By the time you're seeing this, I probably already have it and I'm actually installing it, which is gonna be in an upcoming video. So definitely stay tuned, because once I have that rear end, it's just gonna lead to better things. I'm finally gonna be able to get a nice drag setup for the back, wheels, tires. From there, I'm probably gonna do a torque arm, a drive shaft loop. Then we'll be able to actually go to the track, hopefully get a good 60 foot and see what this thing is gonna really do. But as always, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time.